Let us move on. So I chose this poem for the reading today because to me it says what Remembrance Day should be working towards. The reasons why we remember the fallen, the dead of previous military actions, so that we might learn from our previous mistakes and strive to avoid making them again in the future. However, this poem is not a wishy-washy call for peace. It's not a rose-tinted discussion about peace and harmony, kumbaya around the fire. Nor is it the usual lament used on Remembrance Day. It is more a call to action, a hard look at what is needed to achieve true peace, the actions we need to take, and the achievements needed to bring it about. It even goes as far as to point out where we need to start, because we need to start with the young. So it's good that Robbie's here to teach our children a better way of looking at the world and seeing other people. Although children tend to have that open viewpoint to begin with, it is often only through our own negative behaviours, our voicing of our own prejudice, dislikes, distrust, that they learn to think about people in a negative way. So, this poem, which, on the face of it, to be fair, seems like a long list of what is wrong with the world, what's missing, is actually a blueprint, a plan for what can be right with the world, a push in the direction of peace, if you like, with a defined starting point, the young. Now, when I was in the army, I like to bring that up now and again, Remembrance Day was something quite annoying. It meant a lot of polishing of boots, a lot of practice parades, a lot of extra duties. In fact, it was something many of us at the time would much rather have just avoided, particularly when it's raining and cold. That might seem strange coming from a veteran. I mean, surely in the military you think of it as a chance to remember fallen comrades, to connect with other soldiers. But it wasn't. But then the whole thing was aimed at being a presence in the community. It wasn't about connecting with our past, it wasn't about connecting with the fallen. It was about showing that the armed forces are still there, reminding people that even today armed forces are putting themselves in the way of harm, and as such deserve some sort of respect from us. It is a shame that these days it's all so backward looking, lamenting the past, grieving lost lives, memories of conflicts, instead of looking forward, instead of making people think about how they, as individuals, can affect the future. How peace could be achieved if we would only pull together, be a part of a wider discussion on peace, and how it can come about how we should show our young the way to peace. The attitudes of peace, how forgiveness, service, care and acceptance are not a weakness, but they're part of a much greater strength that if we could only harness it, could move the world. Now that to me is something worth remembering, something that would make all those sacrifices worthwhile if we actually moved on. And then they would continue to have a positive impact in a world where it seems that violence and death are a part of everyday life. A world where we seem to be becoming so used to atrocities that we're numb to them, that we just seem to accept acts of violence and hardly miss a beat when someone shoots up a nightclub. Now to me, the only way forward is to educate the young, to be unflinching in our discussions of history. Don't pretty it up, don't gloss over it. But not only our past, but the pasts of other cultures, nations and peoples. Surely, more than ever before, now is the time to teach our young to see things in a different way. For instance, to view slavery from the viewpoint of a slave. To understand that no religion supports violence. To see that it is relatively a small group of people who advocate violence, extremism, murder to further their own agendas, and not the majority of any people. I believe the majority of people just want to get on with their lives, to be happy, to have peace, to live in safety, and hopefully in comfort. Not always the case. But it is important that we ourselves learn the lessons of the past. That violence and atrocities can spring from seemingly insignificant acts, from what might seem fairly minor changes in attitudes or even laws. The past to hatred, to demonising the other, for want of a better word, it's not always obvious, but can be made up of little jokes, small comments, stories that highlight the worst of any group of people, any culture, any religion, or any belief system. After all, where's the harm? It's just a bit of fun, isn't it? That's the things we often hear when we challenge someone on what they say. It's just banter. I didn't mean it, it's just a laugh. But there is harm, as it can lead to someone to form an impression on something that is untrue, or at least an extreme rarity, an impression that can colour their view of an entire people or community. When we see even one person as less than, or not as worthy of, we begin to stir up those feelings against not only that individual, but anyone who is even remotely like them. We've seen it lately with the abuse and attacks against Muslims following any attack that the media labels terrorism. It doesn't matter who carried out the attack, the word terrorism is enough to spark attacks on Muslims. And closer to home, there's the attacks on the rough sleepers here in Brighton and Hove. It seems it doesn't take much for some people to start seeing others as less than human, as things to be swept away like rubbish, to be stamped on. But that is where, as people of faith, we need to be. That's where we have to be, and that's where we should be, challenging that hate speak, combating the twisted views of the violent or extremist minority, of any faith, any group, any nation. Not just there for the big things, joining a rally against extremism, against neo-Nazism, against stigma. These are all worthwhile things. But we need to be prepared to speak up against the little things, to speak out against the jokes, the banter, the sweeping generalisations, the negative stories. And be ready to share the positives. Be prepared to speak up in support of other religions, other faiths, other journeys. Call out people spreading stories that they heard from. Enter any name there. If we are to act as true disciples of Christ, as true children of God, then we need to share that openness, that belief in the positive, the faith that there is and always will be more loving, peaceful people than hate-filled, violent ones, in any group, any community, any culture. Then our young will embody these beliefs. Those positive attitudes will become a part of their emotional makeup. And surely that can only bode well for the future. As the poem says, there will be peace. And I believe that with my whole heart. I truly do. But it won't just happen by itself. It won't appear magically, Harry Potter style, with a wave of a stick. It will be the result of hard work, of living lives that may at times push us to our limits and beyond. It will be the result of people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all nations, whether they believe in him or not, living like Christ. Living lives that value others, being willing to serve others, lives of love for all creation, no matter what form it takes. Lives that not only value and respect the other, but truly believe that we are all connected, that in fact we're all in it together. And as the poem says at the end, there will be peace when enemies become fellow human beings. Although I would paraphrase that slightly and say, there will be peace when the other is welcomed, embraced, and not feared. But now is the time to remember the past. Yes, of course. Of course we should remember the past, but learn from it. But it's also time to look forward, to begin to build the better future we all want to see, to begin to lay the path to a true, lasting peace for everyone. And it starts with a single step. That of following in the footsteps of a young Jew from 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years! Surely, isn't it time we got it right? Thank you.